Yes, my Straight Talk family, whenever you hear that theme song, you know it's time for another edition of Straight Talk, and time for me to bid you good night, St. Kitts and Nevis. Good night to the entire Eastern Caribbean region, and I should say good night to the world. My Straight Talk family, wherever you are in the world, and in particular I greet those in the diaspora all over the world, in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, and there are a whole lot of you all over North America. So I'm at liberty to say good night. I can't say good morning, and I will say good afternoon, because one of such greetings will be applicable to the region in which you now find yourselves. For tonight's episode, we are fortunate to have with us for the entire program former Prime Minister Timothy Sylvester Harris, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Sylvester Harris, who will speak specifically on the 2023 budget estimates. You know, I've already preferred my own view on the budget, but what we will do, we'll allocate all the time we have available, so I will forego our usual observations in review. For those of you who are normally with me, the observation in review as a time when we highlight the issues that we may have addressed in the past, and we do some reflection. We then ask a few questions such as what was accomplished, how has it helped others, what has changed since, and what can be expected next. Also what new we have learned as a people. Except to note as an observation tonight, my Straight Talk family, that the management of the MSR Media Limited came to St. Kitts Nevis with empty briefcases. But after 2 short years and a monthly stipend, they are now actually investing in a property, my Straight Talk family. They are now investing in a property, in a hotel to be exact. In a hotel to be exact, my Straight Talk family, they are investing in a hotel to be exact, my Straight Talk family, and that's something very interesting for me. Our own Prime Minister Drew, my Straight Talk family, has been tight-lipped with respect to any money paid to the MSR Limited. Our own Prime Minister Drew has been tight-lipped to any money paid to MSR from the St. Kitts Nevis Treasury. It's a new paradigm. My Straight Talk family, in terms of transparency, and that was introduced by Prime Minister Drew as he in fact didn't even respond to a question from the media. But really, since MSR Limited has come with an empty briefcase, and we know that they have been getting funds from the Nevis Treasury.
Mark Brantley, who is the Premier of Nevis. The economy.
Yes, there is a financial arrangement with MSR. I believe the number is $150,000.
We are prepared to do 35 films over the next 5 years. Along with our development, we are finalizing the purchase of a hotel in St. Kitts so that we can have a base to produce and train people in St. Kitts.
Yes, and you know, and as we have spoken before, that you will definitely have our support.
Yes, without 1 cent in the briefcase, they have in fact invested in a hotel just 2 years now, and it's a new paradigm of transparency that was introduced by Prime Minister Drew, as can be gleaned from his response to this reporter.
Afternoon, Lusha Dix, thank you, Serious Observer. My question to the Prime Minister. Last time we had a count of how much CBI applications had been processed was in 2018. The question is, how many passports have been processed up until this date, and how many citizenship applications have you signed off on since in the first 100 days since taking office? And second question is, what is the general breakdown of nationalities who are willing to get citizenship, economic citizenship from St. Kitts and Nevis? And
Right.
is there a plan to put a cap on any national?
Is there a plan to?
Put a cap on economic.
Right, so the questions you have asked are very good questions, and we'll have to get back to you on the numbers, because they are very, very specific, and I don't want to not give you. All right, so we can always work on disclosing. We'll do that. Let me say on a number of things that you asked with respect to the numbers. Those are critical questions to ask, and we'll get back to you with respect to those numbers, and you can contact us as well to be specific. All right.
And till this date, he has not released any information whatsoever to the media. And that's the new style of transparency being practiced by the Terence Drew administration. The Prime Minister Drew as well signed a memorandum of understanding with Afrexim Bank, he told the nation. He claimed, but only him and his close friends are aware of this agreement. He also signed, purportedly, a letter sent to the Caribbean Development Bank regarding geothermal development on Nevis, but its content is unknown to the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. But we are going to forego, like I said, these observations in review and yield the remainder of our time to our special guest, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Sylvester Harris. And Timothy Sylvester Harris, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Sylvester Harris, is with us already, my Straight Talk family, and I want to say good night to you, Prime Minister Harris. Prime Minister Harris, I say good night to you, and
good
welcome
night.
to another edition of Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk.
Good night. Thank you very much for the welcome and the facility you have allowed me to speak to the citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to thank you and thank your Straight Talk family for tuning in for tonight's important edition.
And thank you to be here with me as well. Now, Dr. Harris, I was reflecting sometime just before the program, and I recall that some weeks ago you celebrated, I think, was your 29th anniversary as a parliamentarian. So I'm saying here, you must have made presentations, 29 at least, budget presentations or presentations on the budget estimates. And I also recall that you, in fact, served as a Minister of Finance in the Douglas Labour administration. So you would have as well presented and tabled 2 or 3 budgets. And as Prime Minister, I believe you tabled 6 or 7 budgets. So all told, if my mathematics, which is my strongest weak point, is correct, you may have presented and tabled some 9 or 10 budgets. But the last budget estimates, a week ago, the whole world, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the whole world, I say, everyone was awaiting your presentation, but it seemed as if there was something afoot, and I learned this.
What is so significant about is that you would know yesterday I did not speak at the end of the budget session because the Prime Minister strategically wrapped up the session, and I decided that I would come on radio today and speak to the issues. This morning I had the opportunity to be at ZIZ, and then this afternoon I want to thank Freedom for giving me the opportunity to be here with you, EK, so that we can have greater elucidation on the issues of the budget.
So, Dr. Harris, it must have been the first time you never presented on a budget or on any budget estimates. What's your reaction to that strategy to actually shut you out? And perhaps in the process, you can actually tell the nation what are the important things and perhaps the most important thing you wanted to say about the budget.
Well, thank you very much. The statement by former Prime Minister Denzel Douglas, I think, tells a lot, that it was a strategic effort to contain the involvement of members of the Parliament and what should be a statement of public policy, a statement of public accountability, i.e. the budget for St. Kitts and Nevis. Here it is that on the government side, a member who is the most senior member of Parliament and who would have presented several budgets as Minister of Finance, is telling the public and the world at large that for some reason known to the Prime Minister and his advisor, he was not to speak. And therefore he had to go first to ZIZ, second to Freedom Radio, to be able to elucidate issues in relation to his ministries for which budgetary allocations have been made. That itself is unfortunate and had never before happened this way. And so if they had strategized to prevent Dr. Harris from speaking, it appeared in order to achieve that, they had to also prevent Denzel Douglas from speaking. I think it's a sad day for democracy. It's a sad day for public accountability, especially as the government pretend to be concerned about issues of good governance, wanting to create a new day, a new opportunity for inclusiveness, and they would go to the lowest low to ensure that one could not contribute. In my own view, the budget, as I said, if we start from the standpoint of public accountability, national development, we would want a government budget that provide guidance, support, inspired, coordinated national action, and the priorities identified for the upcoming year. And clearly, in this regard, we had a budget that fell short at many scores. Certainly, when one listened to the budget presentation, we had a focus more on hearsay and melee rather than substantive issues. And in a real sense, the budget proved itself to be incoherent. There was a lot of patchwork, as it were, cut and paste here and there, taking ideas from my administration, and that is good and well because governments are continuous, but at the same time a calculated effort to almost deny that there was an existence of a government before the coming into being of the new Labour administration. And that is fortunate, that is a retrogressive stand to have been taken. And we saw that calculated effort to appropriate all the good things done by my administration, continue a number of programs, and yet at the same time, for them to seem to want to pursue a line that before their coming, there was nothing happening in the country. So we saw this stark dishonesty. I think that when you listen to the public, and they are perhaps a better indicator of how well there was nothing exciting, the budget passed in St. Kitts and Nevis as a non-event. And that is amazing because even in the most difficult times, and we go back to the pandemic years, 2020, 21, 22, people listen to the budget to see how we are going to take on this enormous, unprecedented challenge and what inspiration the government would want to provide to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Much of that has been lacking from this particular budget, the lack of coherence, the lack of an inspiration that persons could have had from what was being presented. The budget, for example, speaks and acknowledges that the high cost of living, skyrocketing cost of living, would be a challenge to our ability to achieve some of the goals in terms of economic growth. That's a critical issue the world over. And so you ask yourself, what were the specific prescriptions that the budget made to help the people, in particular those on lower incomes, to be able to deal with the agony and the pain of a cost of living that has become so unbearable and have made their life challenging? There was nothing. Apart from the fact that the mover said that he empathized with people, specific initiatives were not enunciated. For our part, in June, we outlined a number of specific initiatives to help deal with the cost of living. We, for example, announced that we will continue the waiver of payments for the consumption of water by individuals who had been laid off and who continued to experience a reduction in their earnings. We announced in June 2022 the waiver of payments for the consumption of water by farmers, the removal of VAT and import duty from selected hygiene items, and we could go on and on. Reinstatement of the annual import duty exemption, 16 tires per quarter, 4 pairs of brakes pad, and 3 pairs of brake shoes for H-bus passenger bus operators. The reintroduction of duty-free allowance by non-commercial importers for a 6 months period, which was to end in September 2022, unless otherwise reviewed, and a host of other initiatives on or about the 24th of June 2022. Some 16 specific and target measures, including a moratorium on the payment of electricity bills and, of course, fuel subsidy programs, which was now being extended beyond passenger bus operators to taxi operators. Some of these measures by nature will be continuing in 2023. The point with respect to this is that the cost of living challenges are so great that the measures that we had outlined needed to be revisited and in fact be improved in terms of the allocation. And that is why, for example, we heard in the debate that the bus operators were considering certain action, because clearly, having regard to the consistency of the move, just of fuel, but all their other inputs, whether it is brake pads or whatever the part is, we could understand that their profitability, their survivability is being challenged by the cost of living, as is the survivability and the survival of all of us when we go into the supermarket week after week. Week after week, the stories are being told, whether it is in relation to lettuce or corned beef, whatever the product, it's always an unconscionable movement in the eyes of many. And so we had a lack in relation to some specific initiative to deal with that particular matter.
So if I can...
The budget...
I'm sorry. So if I can summarize your short dissertation there, Dr. Harris. Now, for 93 years, economies all over the world were shattered. And even as I speak, there are concerns right now with continuous emerging variants. We hear of countries and the resurgence of this virus. So, but when we consider the deleterious effects on us as a country and the people, the issues of unemployment are well known, disruption to production and supply chain, so to inflation and the threat of a recession. We can also look, and we should look at consider the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war, which has further threatened our economies, thus creating more complexity and uncertainty. And I have not heard any real strategy outlined in the budget presentations last week. What about that could help us to deal with these unpredictabilities or this unpredictable world in which we now have to live? Have you?
Well, that again was absent. The technicians would have done their best to identify the framework against which the budget is being drafted. And clearly they understood that the Ukraine-Russian war has tremendous global implications, all of them adverse for countries, because it has implications for the availability of products, bearing in mind that Ukraine has long been one of the food baskets of Europe, and the unavailability or disruption of transportation supply chain links will mean that prices will go up as demand will turn elsewhere, among other things. Russia itself is a significant producer of products that are needed for agriculture. And any disruption, any hostility are going to bring challenges with increased costs, unavailability, and all the difficulties with shipping, with insurance, and all of that. So that is a significant risk on the downside of the economy, and it's going to be critical. We have issues even with the transportation of fuel and what that will do to tourism, etc., etc. So these were significant links. That is why I spoke to the issue of incoherence. It is that some people would have given advice, and the mover of the bill attempted to put a political spin. So certain things he did not bother to deal with, which ought to have been dealt with to bring a clearer understanding of the realities that we face.
Okay, a lot of blame has been apportioned. The culpability is being passed on, and nobody wants to really deal with the now situation and move forward. For example, the comment came as it relates to the lockdown.
And the area around the 2 years. And when they came into office, give credit to Dr. Simmons and his team.
I have indicated, with the support of my colleagues, that we would have discussed that there be no more restrictions for our people to travel to St. Kitts and Nevis. I have indicated a waiver until we would have sorted out all of the necessary channels. So there's a waiver now. So at this present moment, our people can travel to St. Kitts and Nevis without any restrictions at all. They don't need to do any test. And all of this is based on sound scientific advice. I would have met with the task force. We would have gone through the scientific data. And therefore, I want to announce that based on that, their advice in discussions, that there is no scientific basis to continue the restrictions, and therefore they are lifted. And I'm sure that our people will be happy for that.
So the lockdown was stopped, but your cabinet, Dr. Harris, was blamed for having the scientific data being presented by the task force, and you refused to open the country. How do you react to that?
I say that the Prime Minister is being very, very dishonest, and that seems now to be a characteristic of his, pathological in terms of the disinformation, the untruths which he propagates. At no time did my government act other than on the advice presented by those who were in the leadership of the task force dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And everyone, honest enough, will say that every decision that we took was supported by the science and was supported by the advice of the professional team that had been assembled, comprising personalities not just from the federal government, but the NIA. In fact, we had an all of society approach in the management of the COVID-19. And so information was shared freely. Dr. Laws and Dr. Cameron Wilkinson both did yeoman service to the country in keeping themselves up to speed. Their work and our success in managing the COVID-19 program is well documented in reports from PAHO and other regional institutions. And the country at large, every citizen and resident knows that had it not been for the administration that I had led, our circumstance would have been far more dire, far more unfortunate. But thank God we had wise leadership, not only at the level of the government, but certainly at the level of the technical support team that was advising the government. And I challenge the Prime Minister to produce one single evidence to substantiate his claim that we were advised by the scientists, by the professional team, to take a particular action and we refrain from doing it. That has no basis in reality. And it is part of the campaign of misinformation, as if they want us to forget their obstructionist approach to the management of the COVID program, which went on so well without any assistance from that particular party.
Now, Dr. Harris, I took a cursory glance at the audit report for 2021. And under the summary of financial information, subhead revenue and expenditure, for the year 2021, Parliament approved an expenditure budget of $868 million, which included $36 million in debt. I think that repayment, I think it's in page 5 or page 6, somewhere about there. And revenue for the year was estimated at $773 million, and this included the sale of government lands, which was budgeted to bring in some $12 million. It went on. During 2021, a further $157 million of expenditure was approved by supplementary appropriation warrants. And it concluded in that section at December 31st, 2021, actual revenue total $996 million, and actual expenditure amounted to $877 million, which resulted in an end-of-year surplus of $180 million. And I'm using that as a point of departure coming to 2022, because we won't see that report till sometime next year, 2023. And you've heard talk about deficits and country in the red and comments like that. So when you look at what transpired last year, albeit driving this car in the rearview mirror, what do you expect for 2022 in terms of the reports, in terms of surplus and or deficit?
Well, again, we will, in a short while, perhaps, know what has been realized. As you say, we are looking ahead. And in large measure, we are not yet sure the kinds of expenditures which this government has undertaken, because everything is cloaked in secrecy. If you speak, for example, of and we perhaps will get the CPI dividend program, how does that come about? How much money has been made? We don't know. Who are the beneficiaries of this? We do not know. We hear that among the first set of beneficiaries are the voters who came in from abroad. But we don't know. A lot of things is being hidden from the public, and some of the clips you have played before indicated that. What we do know is that this government has been the most responsible in managing the country. What we do know is that St. Kitts and Nevis enjoy its best year of fiscal management under my watch as the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister.
You
And that is
said,
where-
I'm sorry to interrupt you, so you got to be careful with those listening, because you said this government, you meant your government.
my government,
Yes.
the government that
Yes.
I led for
Yes,
7
okay.
years,
Okay.
has had the best record of fiscal management in St. Kitts and Nevis,
Okay.
second to none. And that is documented by all the regional reports and the audit reports, etc., to which you just made reference. Our record of fiscal discipline, our record of responding responsibly, all those things are well documented, and we feel a sense of pride. And I feel, as a Minister of Finance, for the last, from 2015 to 2022 August, to feel a sense of pride that we have been able to accomplish so much and still leave the fiscal house in good order, best order. We left behind resources, financial resources available to the government of $688 million. No small achievement. We left behind the national debt, which was one time had reached, well, pariah status. We had the second highest debt to GDP ratio in the world. We were a failed state. And that is what took us into the IMF to borrow about $234 million to finance the operations of the government. And so we have come a long way over the last 7 years. $688 million. That is why the incoming government could say there was adequate resources to meet their needs. But that came against the background that we had to deal with the troubles of the worst ever pandemic in 100 years. We had expended over about $250 million by one estimate in terms of our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which again has been lauded as the most comprehensive response of any government in relation to the COVID-19. And we were able to do that again because notwithstanding that the economy was basically shut down as a consequence of COVID-19, we had set aside funds for the proverbial rainy day. And when that day came, as it always will come, we were in good standing according to the IMF. We were in the best standing, rather, of all countries within the hemisphere. But beyond that, is to note some of the things we did and still amass $188 million. We paid off the IMF debt. By about the second year, we had done that. $117 million. The land for debt swap, which was supposed to have poof away our indebtedness to the National Bank. We have paid about $500 million there.
But,
we have given Nevis 6 years, $500 million.
But Dr. Harris, I know you are a PhD in accounts, right? And I've heard about colonial accounting. I'm now asking myself if there's voodoo accounting, because just yesterday, your predecessor had this to say.
The former Prime Minister is talking about $600 million there, when I gave him over $900 million. So where did $300 million gone? If I left you $900 million of the people's money, you know, boasting to say, oh, I left $600 million there. Where did $300 million? Plus all the money that you made for the country for 70 years, where it gone? That's what people should be asking them. Where it gone? Douglas left you with $900 million, nearly $1 billion. You come talking about you only left now $600 million. Where did $300 million gone? And what you collected over the last 70 years, where it gone? That's the question that we should be asking. That's it. Simple questions.
So, is that a fair question? Where he gone?
It's a fair question, and we have explained where it has gone. He is unable, up to today, to do what I did. Provide evidence. That is what we must ask him. He cannot come to sensible people and say, I left $900 million and I gave a haircut to even the churches and the banks and I owe Tutmoon and Sam in Bastia. It is incredible that a former prime minister would think that that sort of foolishness, because that is what we must dismiss it as, could stand in the public domain. When I reported what I left behind, I didn't leave it for chance. The very report to which I made reference, he would have had in his possession a similar type of report. And therefore, I challenge him. The Accountant General is the custodian of government resources in relation to the financial management, etc. All monies for the government must go under the control of the consolidated fund, and any money that is paid out of it could only come as a result of the involvement of the Office of the Accountant General. Indeed, the very budgetary process provides that monies therefore can come out of the budget once that has passed and the Accountant General is authorized to act without further authority therefrom. But the point is, the former Prime Minister has not up to this day provided a scintilla of evidence as to what is left, because he knows there's no record anywhere of him being able to amass that kind of resource. And I'm therefore challenge him to give date and time and to read from the report of the Accountant General in support of that. So that is misinformation. It is vintage Denzel Douglas cannot help himself from untruth. This is the same Denzel Douglas, and this is important, who would say to us, I do not have a Dominican passport. But the High Court, the Chief Justice, found that Denzel Douglas had a passport of Dominica and used it in an improper way, and therefore disqualified him from being a member of the National Assembly. Something is amiss when a man could so boldly tell such untruth, repeated it everywhere, and to found by a court of law, the High Court, in fact, the Chief Justice, to have disobeyed all the laws in relation to membership of the Parliament. So I am not surprised that Douglas will stoop to a new law and continue to tell this honest, make this honest claim. It is vintage Douglas we are dealing with. He cannot help him.
So is this vintage Douglas? Because so many people believe him when Douglas would say something like this just yesterday.
Well,
wait a minute. This is what he said.
The foundation was founded by the National Bank Trust Company. But the trust ain't own it because it's St. Kitts Nevis people passport money that is involved. So the money belongs to the people, the country, not the government. You can't tell me that the money must go into the consolidated fund. No, because now it's gone into the consolidated fund for 7 years. The man, they do all kind of things with it because the Minister of Finance is responsible. There's no board, nothing to control it, nothing. So when they were saying, oh, Douglas put it into a consolidated fund because it is a slush fund. What slush fund you talking about?
I know it gets you wild up, because people talking foolishness, really.
Foolishness!
They did not understand.
Did not understand. It was not the government money, it's not the party money. Right. It's the people's money.
And there must be a proper oversight. And
of course! The man shut down the fund and take all the money and put it into the consolidated fund, and he alone has access to it.
But it sounds believable. What would you say to the people he convinced?
Well, it would sound believable for those who are not informed. And clearly, some people do not understand how government works. Clearly, that requires that all monies, all of the people's monies, should go into the consolidated fund. When we were in a position then, way back in 2013, 2014, we had lawyers of the highest esteem research the particular matter, and they concluded that the operation of the SIDF was illegal, improper, and the funds ought properly to go into the consolidated fund, where they would be subjected to the authority of the Parliament, oversight of the Director of Audit everywhere. Before our attempt and success at doing that, you basically had two governments running. The majority of the government capital project were being done by the SIDF. So the budget then never truly reflected the finances of the government. And it allowed Dr. Denzel Douglas to use personalities like Ed Mead and Hermier and others at his beck and call to do all manner of things. A significant number of the public projects, they were not financed from the consolidated fund. You basically had two governments operating, of which the most powerful was SIDF. So Douglas wanting to go back there again is an effort to take us back to a wretched past, a past that would be unconstitutional. There can be no stronger oversight over the public resources than that provided through the constitutional challenge of putting the money where it rightly belongs, under the watch of the Accountant General and the technicians. And to be clear, no Minister of Government could release funds from the Treasury. No minister can. You have been a minister, and perhaps you could speak to that. Technicians are who deal with the financing of the government. They are accounting officers. A minister can give support to a request for particular expenditure, but he has to go through a significant system of control which protects the public. And there could be no greater assurance than the fact that I have never signed one check, could never sign one check. They are persons authorized to act appropriately when it comes to the finances of the country. And those persons are the technical people within Live Ministries collaborating with the technicians within the Ministry of Finance. So that information that Dr. Douglas passed again was bad, it was wrong, it was faulty, and it reflects a decadent mind that is willfully and maliciously misleading the people of the country. That is not government work. Perhaps it works so under him, but no proper government can work that way. And that is why all checks must come issued to the Accountant General, and all inflows must go to the same consolidated fund from which payments are being made.
Now, Dr. Harris, with your long tenure in Parliament, vis-a-vis government as well, I was also reflecting, and you would have worked with several attorneys general, going back to Delanabat QC, Dennis Merchant, and the names continue. Your last AG, Vincent Juicy Byron. And when you see what's happening now in terms of the rule of law, and I've been hearing talk about the rule of law versus the rule of man, and when you hear your chief legal officer making certain comments publicly, and literally naming and shaming and trying upright citizens in this country who have worked hard. And when you hear some of the comments by the incumbent Attorney General, I mean, this recent one was this.
We are at a proverbial fork in the road. Change. Lead us down the right path is the member for St. Christopher A. That is why he appointed me to be the anti-corruption minister. I am the anti-corruption minister. Let the people in this country know. Let it be known that this, the people's government, does not tolerate and will never tolerate abuses of the Treasury by anyone. A new day and a better way is upon us. The people have asked for openness, fairness, accountability, and good governance from the people who sit on this side. That time is now to this country. Madam Speaker, I am proud personally to be a man of action, not one who just likes to bang his mouth. I can beat my chest and boast that I am a hard worker.
How can people be confident that a government led by an individual who actually in the campaign to get into government 23 years ago said, we need to stop the corruption, we need to stop the bleeding, we need to have integrity in public life. And that was one of the reasons why a younger Dr. Douglas was elected. 20 years later, 18 years later, the Integrity in Public Life Act is passed, not activated. 20 years is a long time. How can you convince people that in 5 years, for example, if the election is 5 years in 2020, how can you convince people that that 5 years of reflection will change his ideas about what should be on the legislative agenda?
Small acts of corruption tolerated by leaders evolve into systematic corruption, easily and sometimes overnight. Only a leader with integrity can put an end to corrupt practices within the institution he or she leads. Because a leader with integrity will not take bribes, he or she will also seek to eradicate bribery within the structure of the institution by setting clear anti-corruption policies and by policing them. In my context, being a minister of government, albeit for a couple of weeks, the way we plan to begin to tackle the currently existing widespread corruption in our federation is by fully operationalizing the Integrity in Public Life Act, the Freedom of Information Act, and the Anti-Corruption Act, which will work as the three pillars of protection from the treasury rapists that currently exist throughout our ministry.
Are you familiar with any of these, Dr. Harris?
Well, I am really not too sure what the Attorney General is attempting to say. And the Attorney General need to take advice in terms of what he delivers in public and in private, because there really is much that is undesirable. Even his position to be an impartial person pursuing the rule of law on behalf of the country. The Attorney General has that broad view. The Attorney General is not locked away as the Attorney General of the Prime Minister. He's the Attorney General for the people and therefore has to reflect balance and wisdom. And we see a lot of that is lacking. And I don't know on what particular world he's existing, because it was his father who did a treatise, if you will, in relation to the rule of law in Nevis under the administration of which he has now become a part. It was Charles Wilkin who wrote the book on the 26-month delay in the holding of the motion of no confidence and what it did to democracy and the rule of law. So I am not understanding what he is attempting to say and what he is attempting to prove, that he is this bad man. Well, I don't know there are any attorney generals around the world who consider themselves a bad man and they're going around beating their chest. It's really language that is unbecoming and, in my view, highly irresponsible for any minister. Any minister. It shows the arrogance. That is what it reflects. An arrogance in the personality and a sense that they themselves, he himself, is above the rule of law. And he ought to exercise caution and moderation in relation to that. And so we have to move away from what he's saying, but clearly with that temperament and that mindset, my view is that he is not on the path to achieve law and order in St. Kitts and Nevis, it appears more he's on a vendetta. So people must shake in their boots. Well, no one will, because the rule of law is still strong in St. Kitts and Nevis. And the evidence abound to that. These things to cherry pick what one will want to speak to and what is important. The Integrity Commission, he himself noted that the administration before us languished with it for 20 plus years. 20 plus years. He seemed to be condoning that. We move ahead with the particular legislation, giving it life, put an integrity commission in place for the first time in the history of the country, provided it an office, outfitted the office, set it to work. And the integrity commission right now is functional and operational. And so when he speaks about it, is to deny the progress that has been made over the last 7 years in relation to the operationalization of the Integrity Commission. It has as its chair a former judge in Justice Lance, think is a chair. He has as one of its key servant, a former audit director of audit. So it is well set to perform its role and its work. And if there are additional things to do, it is for him. He said he's going to amend the legislation. Do that. Just do the work. And stop, as it were, making a show. Stop, as it were, forcing himself and the public with statements which are unbecoming and for which he ought to get proper advice from those people who have been around long enough and understand that the kind of approach which an attorney general ought to take and stop this political witch hunt and which he appears to be on. But it is amazing that as he decries the rule of law in the country, in which his firm has been practicing, going to the courts, his senior within the firm has repeatedly indicated that the rule of law in terms of the functioning of the courts in St. Kitts and Nevis have been strong, has been strong. But he's coming out for political reasons saying a different tune. Well, what is the truth? We have what we call the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index. And for 2022, St. Kitts and Nevis is among the very few countries that have improved on its status, global standing. This is significant because when you listen to them with their mischief, they attempt to give the world that the worst atrocities have taken place in St. Kitts and Nevis and that the rule of law had basically been put on pause. Whereas over the last 7 years, St. Kitts and Nevis have been among the top performers around the world, within the region, and further afield, well, closer home, within the sub-region. What do I mean by that? St. Kitts and Nevis had an overall score of 0.63, and the index where 0 was the least performing and 1 was the top. Just on the face of that, we are above average. But more than that, St. Kitts and Nevis ranked 39 of all 100 plus countries around the world. In other words, we are an above average performer on the Rule of Law Index. We rank 5 in the hemisphere of 32 countries. 5, and second I think it is within the sub-region. Yes, there will always be room for improvement, but clearly this is a scorecard of which we can be proud. And among the factors that had been looked at by the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index for 2022, were constraints and government powers. Constraint and government powers. Absence of corruption. And we were again in the top 10 best performer in the hemisphere. In the Americas, that is where we rank 30 plus countries, and we are in the top 10 in relation to that particular matter. Well, law and order and security, we were in the top 5. In fact, we ranked number 4 in the hemisphere. Regulatory enforcement, again, we had an impressionable and satisfactory standing of number 4 in terms of the ranking. Civil justice, we rank number 2. Number 2, that's where we rank. Criminal justice, a regional ranking, 5th. And 7 of the 8 factors were among the top 10 best performers and the indicators that have been used to assess the rule of law, not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, around the world, in the hemisphere. We have done remarkably well. So when you hear persons, objective persons, conducting surveys, conducting analyses, and being able to showcase our St. Kitts and Nevis where it ought to be, top of the class in fiscal management, and top of its class in terms of its performance and the rule of law. That is where it is. And you hear other persons, imperfect beings that all of us are, coming with their political slant. We know that nothing good will come from those kinds of persons who would want to hide the truth, to create misinformation, disinformation, and to slander others. Thank God they are independent persons, unbiased, with no political vendetta, who are out there and willing to, as it were, provide documentary evidence. That is what it is. In all these indicators, there will be room for improvement, and we continue to work on it. And that is why, unlike some other countries, we have improved in our own scorecard, globally and otherwise, in terms of the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index. So we are having 2 sets of tales. One coming from politicians, overzealous they may claim to be, to prove a point. To prove a point. And in order to do that, they seem to believe that their job is to name and shame people. Well, what about the rule of law? What about the presumption of innocence? What about the due process which every citizen is entitled to? And the Attorney General of all persons must be the lead person that ensures that access to justice is available to everyone. And he must defend the right of persons to have that access. And for the presumption, which is a cardinal principle on which the rule of law is hinged upon, that persons are presumed to be innocent until found guilty by an appropriate body set up to adjudge the matter. And therefore, I find that his conduct is inappropriate, unbecoming of someone in the office of the Attorney General. And wiser head ought to prevail, because the biases are zooming through. And it is unfortunate that one would start a profession and making it so clear that they have one vendetta, one score to settle, and that is zooming through every pronouncement. Every pronouncement. And by so doing, he is succeeding, through inadvertence or otherwise, to undermine confidence in the judicial system And I wonder what some of the senior members of the bar are thinking, from whence we came. Attorneys general are not new to St. Kitts and Nevis. None of them, to their credit, have behaved so loosely and disrespectful to the rule of law. None of them have showcased that in this manner. And I think that this is very, very unfortunate and prejudicial to persons who will have to seek justice. And I would advise caution and care in relation to that matter. I am very happy about what we have been able to do in relation to law and order. I am very happy that the tragedy which Charles Wilkin outlined in the 26-month delay in holding the motion of no confidence, that we rectified that. We went to the Parliament and we dealt with that particular matter and set a reasonable time frame with which motions of no confidence can be dealt with. That is where we came from. We came from a situation in 2015 where our country was like a pariah. We came from a situation where law and order had been lost or was being lost. The Chamber of Industry and every organization in the country, the Bar Association, knew that. We came from a situation where the two most powerful countries in the region sanctioned our government and our country. United States of America with the FinCEN Advisory, Financial Crimes Advisory in 2014, Canada removing what we had long enjoyed, the visa-free access because of loss of confidence in the quality of governance that the Douglas administration was purveying to the country.
Prime
we
Minister?
have to be able to look how far we have come.
Dr. Harris, there's no straight talk without the participation of our listeners. And I forgot to mention that tonight we are joined by Sugar City FM, and we normally have on board Win FM as well. So we'll go to the lines momentarily, and the numbers for those of you who may be first timers are 663-6672, and or those in diaspora 646-829-6672. There are some who like the cloak of anonymity, so we give you access via our email platform, which is Straight Talk Patches, that's one word, STRAIGATTALKPATCHES at gmail.com. But before I go to the lines, and the lines are already lighting up, there's a lot of emphasis, and even overemphasis as well, on this procurement. And the Attorney General even stretched it, I should say, to the extent he was saying, or he said, that those who entered into contracts without the process, the tender process, I'm paraphrasing here now, in fact, committed criminal offenses. So there's this emphasis on procurement, and you may want to even just address that quickly before we go to the lines as well. You've heard issues of the Bastille High School and so many other issues, and this procurement process, as if we don't understand what's procurement all about. Any reaction to that? You must have heard yourself.
Well, again, it's that vein in which the Attorney General has prisoned himself. That role of somebody and a vendetta, out to get somebody. Because the procurement has been happening in St. Kitts and Nevis all along. There are set procedures. The public works, for example, in relation to works, have done a job in relation to procurement. Procurement has been happening. There's a Procurement Act. It sets certain limits by which certain functionaries of the government should act. the very Procurement Act I heard him speaking about, he said he's going to bring certain modifications to it. So again, the act, like all laws from time to time, have to be reviewed, and we have no difficulty in principle with reviewing the Procurement Act and to see areas that needs modification, being the beneficiary of that modification. But I don't know that there have been any significant breach of the Procurement Act. We in fact have set up, and again this is remarkable, because who it is set the Procurement Act in operation? My administration. My administration put the Procurement Board so that the Procurement Act could have life. And it has been a work in progress as a new mechanism superimposed on other agencies within the government. And that is something that one has to look at in terms of the efficacy of the outcomes coming from this particular mechanism. I don't know of any specific case, and I'm not going to get involved in those, because one has to be careful not to be prejudicial to persons who may have to go to the courts to enforce their rights and take legal remedy. And it's therefore unbecoming for persons in authority to cherry pick. So, for example, we hear about procurement. Will he identify all that they have done and indicate whether or not they went to the Procurement Board and how quickly they were dealt with by the Procurement Board? I heard a minister of government, for example, spoke about work starting on the old Bastia High School site on the roof. And I wonder, did that go to the Procurement Board? So, you know, to be fair and to be just, we have to look not just in a particular direction. We must look all around us. And those who are wanting to, as it was said, they are passionate about it, must make sure that they are passionate, that it is being done within the circles in which they are, because we are well aware of a number of contracts that had been given to persons. They haven't gone to the Procurement Board. But I am not going to stay here and indulge in the pathway in which I have just criticized, in identifying and trying to name and shame citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis who would have gone through a process, being the beneficiary of participation in a particular process that was available to them, and to now come to try to disrupt or to shame them or to find fault. I am not going to get in that particular mode and that particular frame without some evidential basis in which to engage. Again, I advise caution in relation to that. And this is part of what it is. The devil is in the details, the devil is within the behavior in which certain persons seem to arrogate on themselves that they are angels and others are men, where there are no angels. There are no angels, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful. This is a small society, and a lot of things are known.
I want to ask you one more question before I go to the lines, because I know when the lines are going, I may not be able to get in some questions. But I have served, for full disclosure, in a cabinet with you for 5 years. But there's this view being touted by the incumbent administration that there was no investment for the last 7 years. I know how I feel about that statement. How do you feel about that statement?
Again, it's part of the lies, the deception, and the belief that people are silly and people can easily fool. Some of the most significant investment took place under our watch. You led, for example, a historic investment by private parties and others in the construction of the second cruise pier. That was a collaborative effort. That is significant investment. You presided over the remarkable resurfacing of an entire island main road. That hadn't happened maybe 15, 20 years ago. That happened. Those are significant investments that impacted people. We had investment in our housing stock, both private sector led and public sector led. Those are investment. If they are looking for investors, like those who came over the peninsula, who had no money, who were found guilty in a court of law of oppression of the minority, and were able to get some, $43 million to go do something which they have failed to do in terms of development of the peninsula, then they are looking the wrong place. They are looking the wrong place. Look at all the other activities that are taking place, some of them by our own citizens. Are their investment not important? Look at the investment, for example, by RAMS over the last 7 years and still ongoing. Are those not significant and important? Look at the investment at McKinley by Dr. Ballantyne. Are those kinds of investment not also important? Look at the investment in terms of Sibio Gardens, a major touristic facility that has completed phase 1 or about to complete. Are those things not important to those who are talking about in investment? Look at the significant investment that the government must explain their reluctance to have that proceed in terms of the solar farm. You are aware of that. A major investment activity that could put us a long way on the path to becoming secure in terms of alternative energy, not requiring other than the facilitation of the government. Private parties come ready and willing to move forward, and the government is providing a hindrance with respect to that. So investment, yes, there has been and there will continue to be investment by locals, particularly inspire all of us. Investment by the public sector, critically important. And investment by the private sector, also important. There have been significant investment in all areas under the team unity. Some have been small, some have been large. This, for example, at that area in West Mass, they started the build-out of a high-income, middle to high-income housing project. Is that not important to those? So there have been investments, and they are going to continue, and I've just touched a number of them. There are a number of them also when we came in were basically an Agoslo, marking time, land cleared, but nothing happened. We had that, for example, down at the Ramada site. When we came to office, nothing was happening. We met with the investors as we met with all of them, and we were able to get at least phase 1 of that project built out. So there have been significant investment in the country, and we are proud of what has been accomplished.
Okay. Now it's 16 past the 9 o'clock hour, and I really had to give the former Prime Minister as much time as we could. Not that we don't want him to hear from you. I'm going to go to the lines right now, but I always like to implore my callers to respect others, and of course, to achieve that, you must first respect yourselves. Let us try to be fair to all concerned. Let us try to build goodwill and better friendships. Let's ensure that in all we say and do, it will be beneficial to all concerned. And in doing and saying those things, let us strive to build a kinder, gentler St. Kitts and Nevis. With that said, at 17 past 9 o'clock, I go to the lines. Caller, you're live.
Good night, Mr. Labor.
Good night, my dear. How about thou?
Not too bad. And my best Prime Minister, I'm so glad that you come to that you can explain. Love, peace, and good health. 10 men, you only one, and you got them going. 3 hours, nothing else you could have talked about. You and your brother. They come to do. We don't see what you have done. They say they say they will give $1,000 on the 5. It was not enough. Take off names and their own people, they hold up the lands. You as a countryman, get your education like them and better. If you take, nothing for you. Their family was getting too. They forget, if they say nothing was doing, let us see what they will do. Let them investigate all what they want. The unemployed is only for the now opposition because they turn away people to put their own. 64 people in tourism alone. All of them was the same set of people that was around you and still there. Help to cheat to get you out. But you stay in the house or go out or don't come back. Is the no manner speaker don't want you to talk. It was there before them. All have the same attitude. You could go with them. They will waste the money on joyride. You're just like his godfather. Where is your own gone? Them one, you take them one. Whereas you had two, so they take you one. I'll be back.
Thank you, Alice, for your nice hearing you.
Thank you very much as well. The lines again are open. The numbers are 663-6672. And for those in the diaspora, it's 646, beg your pardon, 829-6672. Let's go back to the lines. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller.
A pleasant good night to you, Captain.
Good night, my dear. How art thou?
I'm fine.
I see those dimples.
And to the best Prime Minister in the Federation, a pleasant good evening to you. And I want to wish you a blessed Christmas and a bright, strong, and healthy New Year when it comes.
Thank you. Same happy return.
To those tornado, hurricane, thunderstorm, lightning, and earthquake out there, don't even bother waste your time with them. Because it seems like land and bridges is falling down. None of them know what they must do. None of them know what they must say. Nothing at all. So you don't have to waste your time on top of them. Leave them there because they will fall like land and bridges falling down. I want you all to have a blessed Christmas and a bright and prosperous and strong and healthy New Year when it comes. You all have a pleasant night.
Have a pleasant night as well, my dear. It's 21 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. We go straight back to the lines. Caller, you are live. Hello, caller. Yes, caller, you're live.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, my dear.
I have two questions for former Minister Harris.
Mm-hmm.
The first question is, can you break down or give the definition of the consolidated fund? That's one. And the second question is, what the money that is in place in that fund, what is it used for?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and I'll give you the opportunity to do that now. I should have done that earlier, Prime Minister. The consolidated fund, yes.
Well, I thought you were going to do that. But quite simply, the consolidated fund is really the treasury account. It's really that account in which all monies which belongs to the government ought to go. So you would note that whether you pay money at inland revenue or up at the port or at the treasury, all those monies from those revenue collecting agencies would go into the consolidated fund. It so-called is a terminology of law, but in practice, see it really as a government bank account. And it is the account to which all funds belonging to the government ought to go. And as to what can come out of it, that is why we have the budget and the appropriation bill each year, because that provides the legal authority by which funds can be released from that account. And it is the job of the Accountant General to ensure that any payments made are lawful and legal, and they conform with the budget and the necessary appropriation warrants where from time to time they are used. In other words, monies coming out must be for a legitimate purpose of the government, and monies coming in belonging to the government must end up in the consolidated fund. That is both a constitutional requirement and a requirement of other laws in support of the financial management of the country, laws dealing with the financial administration of the country. So I see it really again simply the government account, in the same way you have your account at some bank or at the credit union. You put your monies in, you and only those who are signatories to the account are the only persons who can get it out. In the process of the government, though, there are several controls that are installed that are available both at the level of the line ministry, and then they have to go to the Ministry of Finance, at times the Director of Audit Office, and finally to the Accountant General before payments are made. So it is not easy to get money out of the government, because for it to happen, it has to have the necessary authorizations.
You couldn't have said it better, Prime Minister. And the section in the Constitution, for that lady and others who may be interested, it's Section 69 of the Constitution, which reads, all revenues or other monies raised or received by the government, not being revenues or other monies that are payable by or under any law into some other fund of the government established for a specific purpose, shall, underline, shall be paid into and form a consolidated fund. And withdrawals from the consolidated fund or either public funds, they said no money shall be withdrawn from the consolidated fund except, amongst other things, to meet expenditure that is charged upon the fund by this constitution or by any law enacted by Parliament. So it is a constitutional requirement that, as I like the way you put it, Prime Minister, the main bank account of the government. Let's go back to the lines. Caller. Yes, caller, you are live. Hello, caller, are you there? Okay. Seem to have missed that caller. It's now 26 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. The lines are open. My Straight Talk family, for those who want to call us. Again, the numbers are 663-6672. We go back to the lines. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller? Are you there, caller?
Yes, Prime Minister. You was so much on their mind. They can't even focus. 10 men was on benefit, so you did not come back. They cheat to go in the house. They're in it now and still studying you and your brother. What pay he was getting on their mind too. You give $1,000 for who was not working, bus and taxi men too, and you was not doing nothing. The foreigners come on the 10 man in one, not you. Vote for them. Help them cheat now. Don't want them. The AG went to Dubai. What come from there, he did not find out. When he come insulting black people, because they're selling the passport for so much, they give money to keep your mouth shut. I hope they find what 10 men went back for that morning. Let him say he mess up St. Kitts, not you. You was going to build a school. They don't want to claim nothing from you. You did not mash up the doors and the windows.
Okay.
Best Prime Minister, stay strong. Christmas greetings to you and your family. Don't matter what. God's still with you. New Year's blessing. Nabu culture and manners. Your callers and emailers. You too stay strong. Happy birthday and anniversary again. When you sit down around evil men to eat, know what is in front of you.
Okay.
Culture used to tell you about the American Pep. You was not studying him. That's why he could talk now, having meeting with pastors. He talk about Sean and he proved himself. That's where the trio is, but it's God. Could not wait. Have a good night, everybody. Get home safely.
Have a good night as well. Let's go back to the lines. Caller, you are live. Hello, caller.
Greetings, Mr. Patches.
Greetings,
and
sir.
your guest, Mr. Harris. How are you all?
We are peaceful. I am peaceful.
I am peaceful.
Mr. Patches?
Yes, sir.
I always say, when the election went, and then you hear the composition of the opposition, I always say, going forward, the debate in the House of Assembly would be very interesting, because the opposition, as it is now, are members who was in the government yesterday, in opposition that is trying to get into government. They was in the government yesterday. And when I listen to the debate in the House of Assembly, was very interesting. So I said, to clarify things on my mind that is nationally, I had planned to ask you certain questions tonight, but seeing that you have the guests, as I asked the question, seeing that you also was a member of cabinet, you can also chip in. And this is one of my questions. When I heard geothermal, I said I have to ask a question. And when I hear the comments that was made, and one of the question is, was there any hindrance from the Ministry of Finance to hold up the unveiling of our geothermal project? And did the Premier of Nevis bring that geothermal project as a discussion in cabinet? But you can chip in that too. Government is continuous. When the country was locked down, we hear the cry, just like what we're hearing now, food security. We also hear more money was pumped into agriculture. I, for one, as a citizen, I was looking for more reform coming out of the virus with a mixture of the tourism and agriculture blending together to create an export market for people. Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Harris, for your second term in office, and for the issues that the country was facing at the time, and still, like example, water, etc. Do you feel satisfied of the performance then that can be out now? Those are my questions. Thank you. You all have a good night.
Thank you very much, caller. I'll go back to the lines. We have noted your question, but I'll take as many calls as possible. Caller, you are live.
Good night, Patrick. Red Cap here. How are you doing?
I am peaceful, Andrew.
That's me. And good night to Mr. Harris.
Good night.
I'm happy that you have Mr. Harris here tonight, because maybe he could help me on a question I want to ask. Now, as you know, Fiscal was given $42 million on the Douglas-led, all right, government and so on. Now, after they giving that money and so on, I understand that they selling land, actually. I don't know how true it is, that's what I understand. And now, last about 2 weeks ago, I think that you were saying that they get a cash flow, some kind of cash flow they get. Actually, they refuse to pay, and they still get a cash flow of $6 million. If a person refuses to pay, why give them more money? That's the question. That's one. You know, that is, and I say it again, they get $6 million because, okay, you can't tell me that this wrong for the first government and you're going in and you do the same thing. Because they refuse to pay, right? What you were saying? You want to say something?
Yeah, just for clarification, I think I corrected you. I remember that call. I said that they requested $6 million because they had a cash flow problem. That was the issue.
Oh, they required that because they
asked for that $6 million and wanted to give us some land. The former Prime Minister would be able to expand on that because he in fact chaired that meeting. They wanted to give us 30 acres of land, I remember, on the hillside, and as well as requested $6 million right away because they had this cash flow problem. They had no money to pay their staff and other expenditure, recurrent expenditure. But go ahead, sir, just for clarification.
Okay. But what I don't understand, right, is that you come into a country, right, and you're giving money. I think that investors are supposed to come with their money, actually. That's really how it's supposed to be, actually.
We agree.
Supposed to come with their money. You understand what I'm saying?
That's a good position.
We're not supposed to be lending no investors no money here because what you're trying to tell me, that the people from Sinkers don't have the ideas to do what they had planned, what they're coming with, the ideas what they're coming with. So I kind of confused that. I understand what you're saying about the cash flow, but the problem is this. How can you get that kind of $42 million and then you still, we still got to give you other money when you refuse and you say you want to pay the cost to your workers and all that? I don't understand. So what am I asking again, how come other people here losing the house, losing the car, bank taking back car, bank taking back this, bank taking back that, taking back property, all kind of things, and nobody is here for the national of thinking. Actually, we need to deal with our people more different because it seems like that's why you look to me that the foreigners, once you're from foreign, you get you with murder. You look like that's what we say, we get you real extra good, but the person who born here have to made to be suffer because what? If we get a low income house, and we die and gone, our children have to come and pay for that house. Our brother have to help them pay for that house. No cash flow coming in. Nobody helping us with nothing. If you ain't got a Godfather deal. So my feeling, and it's now by saying, my feeling is this. Now, you said that they offer land. I understand that they offer land and so. But how could you offer land to, you could offer land actually to the government who give you $6 million, the person give you $42 million. So you owe them, you got the right to still offer land to say that you're selling the same people land, the government land, and they don't give you that kind of money. I think, the people of Thinkers have made, was laughed at with them because I could tell you this, these two bunkers are harbor. They are nothing against them. But I would have laughed. If I was a white person or a foreigner, I would have laughed because, you see, I can't go to America with empty pocket and just get no property and get nothing. I can't go there. I have to have my cash. So why we allow these people to come here and just do what they want and just, they're selling us back with land what we give them. That is, I think, all the politicians are guilty on that. Because I could tell you this, if I was the Prime Minister of the country and so on, and I get in and I demand I want my money, I would have never given them no $6 million. However they get you, they would have got to get you. But I would have really tried to get up my land to get them out of the country because you don't went wrong with the $42 million with the government who was there. So I wouldn't have to give them any money. Good night, sir.
Good night, my dear brother. Yes, your points are well taken. Let's go back to the lines, or let's go back Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, you perhaps could address these two questions, or the questions from both callers. The first one as it relates to the geothermal, and the second one with the SIDF and National Bank loans to Christopher Harbour.
Well, the geothermal project is one that has been around for probably maybe 18 years, quite a very long period of time. And it is unfortunate that we haven't seen any significant results coming from that project. And therefore it's something that one needs to reflect upon. In terms of support, where proposals have come to me properly vetted by the technical team, we have always given support. And in the past, we certainly have provided support to the CDB and others for them to give what is very necessary wherewithal they could do to the effort. I have myself had some very frank conversation with Premier Vance Amory in relation to the geothermal. He did in fact give me some advice on at least 3 occasions regarding his own concern with respect to the progress of that. And I would want to refresh myself and the notes I've taken from that conversation, because there were several elements of that particular project that had troubled him, and he had advised me with respect to that particular matter. And I will, as I said, refresh my notes on that. That being said, we have on Nevis and on St. Kitts the prospect of being able to have findings of geothermal, perhaps on a commercial basis, that is yet to be determined. And you, as the host and the person who had successfully done perhaps the most ambitious public infrastructure and utilities project, I think that you could share some insight and the discovery or the probability of such in St. Kitts and Nevis. But we have been working at both ends. We have had technical studies on both islands with respect to that, and we have had for consideration a number of arrangements. But this project, as I said, has been in gestation, maybe a good way of putting it, but it has been long in yielding the kind of optimistic results that all of us had hoped for. And geothermal presents one of many options in terms of alternative energy, clean energy. A second one is solar, and we have combination of both in both islands, including on Nevis. They have some element, not significant to my knowledge, in terms of wind energy. These are all things that we would want to harness. But we are in a situation where we need quick action to get adequate supply of sustainable energy for everyone, for the benefit of everyone in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have advanced in relation to the solar project a very significant potential that could put us ahead of the line in terms of our own taking ownership for the use and development of alternative energy in St. Kitts and Nevis. This will have significant impact on our reliability, the affordability of energy in St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, that will ricochet and permeate through all sectors of the economy. So these are projects that require serious consideration and serious action, and they are not to be gotten into ill-advisedly, and we need to abound ourselves, if you will, with as much technical expertise and advice. And that is where what we have done over the past years. In relation to water, the water issues have been with us for all of our lives, at least all of my life. I went to Keon High School and I was a student there, and I had been very familiar with the water troubles and problems for over a prolonged period of time. And truth is, successive administration, Labour, PAM, etc., all the way up to our tenure, none of us had been able to fully deal satisfactorily with the water challenges that are in the country. What I could say is that we advanced that significantly. We started drilling program with a private contractor, BEAD, who had done some work in Nevis. And that work did not bring the kind of results that we wanted, but that is on the table. We had, before we demitted office, basically had serious conversations with BEAD about continuing some additional work in the Keon area. They had at that time, as I understand it, already had moved most of their equipment, and again, having regard to some issues related to the COVID-19, they were not in a position to perhaps move as quickly as we would have liked in relation to that. What we were able to further was the efforts at desalination, because that had become an imperative, having regard to what our technicians, our lead engineer, Cromwell Williams and others, had put before the government. And so we were fortunate at the time to have had the interest of the government, I think of the UAE, in providing us with desalination plants. We activated that. We took that and quickly responded. The UAE generally moves very slowly, but we took quick action in that, and we were hopefully optimistic that that project would have started soonest. In fact, we were prepared, because we had agreement, to start some of the preliminary work that would have been required in relation to this particular matter. We got caught up in a premature general elections, and you know what happens in terms of the efficiency of the government during such a period. So yes, I regret that more had not been done, but I take some comfort in the knowledge, though, that we had a plan, and the plan had been working, and the plan would have brought the results in terms of significant improvement of the water issues in the country. But there's no better person to address the issues of water than our host, Ian Patches Libert, who had a stellar record, second to none, in terms of issues of public infrastructure, utilities, energy, and so on, which I gave him portfolio responsibilities too. So Patches, you may want to help, since you had been the point man in assisting the caller in that regard. We also, and Patches again had been a lead player with this, had conversations with the Marriott, and those were well advanced. By the time we demitted office, Cromwell Williams and his team had discussions with the management there, and we had reached an agreement which would have led to some easement in the water challenges in certain areas of Basseterre. I am not clear how that has advanced since then, but there certainly was, at least the water engineer, the head of the department, had put certain positions before us for consideration, and we had endorsed them for action. The rest that was left would have been for the technicians to carry out, with that authority given to them, the implementation of these. The Christophe Harbour issue, the gentleman raised several issues. The Christophe Harbour has been the subject of discussions and well, throughout its very existence. I remember week after week, a certain minister, radio commentator, would have dealt with the Christophe Harbour almost week after week. Christophe Harbour came to St. Kitts and Nevis in a real sense somewhat ill-prepared to do the kind of investment that they needed, and was looking for an easy way out in relation to these investments. And that is why, in part, the project hasn't shown the significant progress in terms of delivery of the built-out, the golf course, the number of five-star hotels that were to be available, significant major failings there. It was fortunate to have gotten what many of our own local investors and business people didn't have. It was able to get the government to make available in an easy way some $43 million in first instance. It was able again with the aided and abetted by the government of the day to access resources out of the financial system in ways that were not available to any of our local people. And so that created a particular problem. At the end of it, the situation is that there's a court case involving Christopher Harbour and entities, some statutory and otherwise, of the government, and we hope that those will come to reasonable conclusion. I think the idea of the development of the project is one that we all agreed. Where we have a problem was in the ability of the developer, who should have come, as one caller said, fully resourced, to be able to undertake that which he had committed to do. And his failure to basically bring the kind of resources and bring the kind of leadership that would bring others, if he couldn't do it on his own, to make the kind of investment has created a delay in the build-out of that particular area. And it is a matter that has agitated the cabinet and took many sessions of the cabinet, special and regular meetings to attempt to deal with that. We always want to facilitate all investors because the country, in our view, needs as much investment to fast-track its own development agenda. And so we wish every project a success, but it cannot be to the extent of selling our pride and dignity to investors who seem to have a certain view about our country and our people and what they should be allowed to do and not to do here. We stand in defense of the dignity and the pride of place of our citizens in our country. We understand our own history of oppression, and we have to be very, very careful about who we accept as investors, and we do appropriate due diligence in relation to their own success story, their own plan of action, etc. So I can't contest some of the expectations of the caller in relation to that particular project, but just to say, as we go, we learn, and that had been a very difficult learning as to why the former government had done certain things, which we find adversely impacted the country, impacted the availability of resources for the country and so on. But then again, that was the style of a particular era of bad governance. Same with the Allen Stanford project at the airport, which never materialized. So when they are talking about investment, and they seem to have a preference that it must be somebody of a different color, of a different stripe, that comes in and who cannot do what they propose to do, we have a problem with that. And that is why we hail all of our people who have taken a gamble, taken a chance, because that is part of what investment is about, to start something, to get it going, and we are committed and would be committed as a government to give the fullest support that we can to these projects.
Well, Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, you said a mouthful. But just to add, though, in terms of the geothermal, firstly, the fact is, as you alluded to it, that the geothermal development on Nevis have come with quite a lot of what I call legacy issues. And when we got into office in 2015, right, we were minded of the fact that we have two volcanoes, one on Nevis and one on St. Kitts. And the decision was taken that we would establish whether the resource is on St. Kitts, having been established on Nevis. And if it was established on St. Kitts, we would produce to developing that resource on St. Kitts without retarding the progress of the development on Nevis. That was our position. And that was supported fully by the late Premier Vance Amory. As a matter of fact, I recall joining him in a meeting with the Caribbean Development Bank president. And the outcome of the meeting was quite simple. And it was led by Vance Amory, the late Vance Amory, who said that both resources can complement each other. And that was the position at the meeting in terms of geothermal. Quickly on water. I don't know how many of us are aware that since 2007 or 2008, there's a desalination plant, a reverse osmosis plant, lying idle in La Valley in Sandy Point that could have produced 1 million gallons per day. When we tried to operationalize that plant, the representative and then Deputy Prime Minister said to me that Sandy Point has no water problem. The idea was to operationalize that plant, get water into the Sandy Point and then close environs, Newton and so on, and then redivert the water from Franklin and Stone Fort elsewhere. When that didn't work, we tried to relocate to the plant to Basseterre, and that came at the cost. And when the cost of this option was running us about 4.5 million US dollars, then it came out that the plant with the La Valley area was under was foreclosed upon by the National Bank, but that was another issue, never went into place. We then looked at Frigate Bay, the reverse osmosis plant at La Marriott, and the Marriott gave us a proposal that would, the Royal Utilities, the option provided for us by the Royal Utilities plant was to produce an additional 400,000 gallons per day, the cost of which it would cost us some 184,000 US. The option was, when we looked at the cost of our local production of water, was $15 per gallon versus the desalination options with the Marriott as $31.84 per gallon. So these were discussed, and we didn't advance them. Well, of course, I demitted office, so I was thrown out of office in 2020. So I don't know what happened after that. But you see, again, with the other one, before I go back to the lines, I want to thank this caller for holding. The other one in terms of the SIDF loan and the National Bank loan, I note the former Prime Minister didn't expand quite a lot on it, but there were meetings held with the owners when they came and wanted the government to intervene on their behalf with the National Bank, and the government couldn't do that. But the government took a position, and I remember we reached a conclusion at the meetings that they would surrender 275 acres of land. And then they wanted to, having agreed that, they came back and wanted now to get an additional $12 million. But that's something we can expand upon. But I want to thank this caller for holding. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller.
Prophet Love and Honor, blessed night.
Blessed night, my brother.
Prophet Love and Honor, greetings to you, Brother Patches, and greetings to you, former Prime Minister, Dr. Honorable Timothy Harris, and blessed belated born stamp to you. May you live to see many more, and you have a joyful Irish love with the Almighty. How are you doing, former Prime Minister?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking, and all the best wishes to you. I'm fine.
Hello.
Thank you, and all the best wishes to you.
Yes, just listen to your telephone, Ras. He's responding to you. You have
Okay, listen me carefully now. Listen me carefully. You can hear me now. Yes. I would just like to ask this. Now, the former Prime Minister outlined some details of we quoting back at the budget debate, and he was outlining some investment and the challenge core what was stated in the defense of this new administration, saying that there was no investment under 7 years of his administration. Now we'd like to ask him to make some details about local investment. With these local investment that you outlined, would these local investment have some good indication to steer the economy as a rebound, was it was able to cope with how the economy was driving at the time under COVID? And the next question I would like to ask to you, former Prime Minister, under your watch, you had established which was called the Buckles of Rising Committee. Well, now this new administration coming in, I find it that they have been able to detail a lot of things that was under your administration. And I'm calling on you, as a member of parliament, to outline to this new administration that they should not disrupt the committee and let the committee play this functional role in convening what was laid out in your speech at the historical moment that you call as National Heroes Day over in Connery as the National Hero Park. So I'm saying here now, if you are not genuine at the core what you said in the time, this time now you have to be genuine for your ancestors. You all have a blessed night. Give thanks and keep confidence in good over evil. Blessed love.
Blessed love, my dear brother. You want to address? Let's take this call. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Good evening, Patrice.
Good evening, my brother. How about dog culture?
Oh, well, your radical friend is good, man, for Christmas. And good evening, Prime Minister.
Good evening. Good evening.
Merry Christmas when it comes to you and Patrice and the whole nation, everybody who is listening, Patrice Straight Talk. I have two little short questions. I had one there for Christopher Harbour, but the red cap, he did a good job on it. Now, the first one is this. We have a world recession, and we know there is no exception of any country. And when you have a recession, things are going to go up, 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 up every day until they can't go no further. Now, in the parliament there, and the Sean Richard, he was talking about the buses, the bus fares, they will have to go up. And Mr. Joe, the Prime Minister, said, Sean must take back that because no bus fare is going to go up in St. Kitts. So I want to know if you think St. Kitts is exceptional with the world recession that is taking place right now. So I would like to hear your opinion on that. And then another question. In 2005, when Dr. Douglas closed the sugar industry, he said he get $44 million from the bank to pay the sugar workers. And he paid out 28. That leaves $16 million. I would like to know, where is that $16 million? Because somebody asked that they need the money that they rightfully work for in the sugar industry, and they did not get it. And Dr. Douglas' response was, ask Timothy Harris, where the $16 million gone, if he banked it in St. Martin. Well, I know that you did not do that. The other $16 million.
Caller, please. Let's speak. Caller, let's be cautious where we're going here with that. Please. Let's be cautious where we're going here with that, because as a matter of fact, I believe that. Please, I'm seeking your concurrence here, right? A matter of fact, no, please. I can't do one thing, just turn your volume off. I want to listen to me, right? I am saying to you, culture, I am saying to you, this is how we're going to do this tonight, all right? This matter, I believe, some litigation was advanced some time ago. I don't know where it is up to this present moment. But I'm saying we have passed that stage because one of the first things that the Unity administration did was got $60 million from the Venezuelan government, and we settled that matter of the outstanding severance payments. So I don't think we need to go back down that road there. I don't know if you disagree with me, Prime Minister.
Well, I think you have spoken to it. That matter is solved, and any effort, Douglas, to relieve that really again is part of their calculated effort to create mischief and to be dishonest. Because he had an opportunity to pay the farmer sugar workers. He ended up paying about 968 of them from a total pool of, at one point, the sugar industry had nearly 5,000 people. We came in and we paid over 1,000 persons, close to 2,000 persons, some element of severance, if you will, when he had promised them to pay them in amount surpassing what they would have had under what he described, quote unquote, as a Simmons law. That is the Employment Act that had been passed that defined the kind of ways in which severance ought to be determined. And so we could, you see, it's a game of misinformation and dishonesty. But persons like culture are wise enough to understand and to know and to share with others that Douglas is a person who can't be trusted. And that has been found by the court, a stranger to the truth.
Address as well the, since you have the mic there, the world recession component of the question in terms of the bus fares and so on, and as well the Ras Aya question relating to the Buckley's Uprising Committee, and he asked another question. I didn't make note of it. Can you address that now as well? Yeah.
Well, the Buckley's Uprising Committee was an important one, and as he said, as part of our trying to preserve our heritage, our history, and all that constitute part and parcel of the core socio-economic and political environment of St. Kitts and Nevis, having regard to the landmark role that the Buckley's Uprising played in bringing improvement, amelioration of the condition of black people in particular, and poor people, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but throughout the Caribbean. It gave rise, for example, to the Moyne Commission and all those inquiries that led over time to improvement in the living conditions of ordinary people. We felt that one had to determine from the vantage point of critical assets of the country what role that should play and how we should formulate a response to this historic endeavor that took place and from which, if you were, the genesis of that mobilization found itself expressed in the Buckley's Uprising. I think Rasaya was a member of that committee. It was a broad-based committee. What I can say, I think it was a serious committee committed to doing work, and I hope that that work will continue, and that work will have my support enduring throughout as long a period as is necessary for us to get a final output, which we hope will come soon. I think that is as far as I could go. It's for the committee to make its voice heard and to let the government know what it has done, what it's intended to do. And we see how it goes. But the important role that the Buckley's Uprising Committee has played and should play in helping us in St. Kitts and Nevis better appreciate and understanding of that historical development in which Buckley's played a critical role. In relation to the matter of the bus fare, I think the Prime Minister arrogates certain things unto himself. It's part of the arrogance we are seeing displayed by members of the cabinet, whether it is that they're going to take back people's land and so on, or they're going to come into Parliament with a list of names from every constituency and try to name and shame. A very bad example, and he gives concern to how the rule of law is working, particularly as it relates to data protection, that people's information could be used in such manner and in such a way that they do not have a right to to redress. All these are concerns in relation to good governance and the rule of law rather than the rule of man. But again, we are in a democracy and people will have to stand and fight where necessary for their rights. That is what the freedom of democracy allows people to do all over the world. You see people gather in the street, they express their displeasure with government action, with the actions of private people, bring consideration to their own plight. In a democracy, the power lies within the people to effect change, to demand change, and to ensure that they are not taken advantage of, and that everyone subordinate his or himself or herself to the rule of law. Dr. Jew cannot determine what will happen in terms of bus fare. That has to come from a process of consultation. And Dr. Jew cannot leave the bus drivers suffering and do nothing, and expect that they will continue to be successful at their trade. For our part, we brought them into the loop. We had discussions with them. I brought them in confidence. We discussed a number of areas in which the government could provide relief. And we went back to the provision in terms of concessions and a number of things. Out of that, we came up with a fuel subsidy, which we provided them and which need review at this particular moment in time. We made those interventions really to save the public from increases in the cost of transportation, which we know would negatively affect them. But we asked the bus drivers, as it were, to meet us somewhere along the road because we understand they were suffering. They were losing revenue. And you can't ask a businessman to lose revenue to the point where his business is not worthy, that he has to go to the bank and borrow to buy his fuel, and buy his spare parts. That is not going to work. So there's need for consultation and respect for the bus drivers and respect for those who are taking the bus, and people come together and find some pathway to a reasonable resolution of the matter. The government has to give something to get this to work appropriately.
There's a question here, an email question. Can you provide any update or clarification on the abrupt departure of Mr. Lescan from the CBI program? Can you?
I would hope that as part of the better way, that the government would have come forward and explain why one of the key architects of the reforms of our program, risk management executive, would have left in such a hasty way as you put it. There's information out there, but I want to test, as it were, the good governance agenda, the information sharing. Why so many things the government is not coming and truthfully speak to the public about them? Why are they hedging? Why are they being dishonest regarding matters of significant public concern? And the departure of Lesga is a significant matter, having regard to his role in the CBI program and his work. But I can say that in terms of the reform of the program, he has been an important architect of that. Came well recommended by IPSA, did work, helped us to win the confidence of the international stakeholders, and took our program to a significant level where it has now become a significant contributor to our socioeconomic development.
This other question comes forth as well, Dr. Harris. Mr. Libert, I'm going to be brief and direct. Kindly ask Sylvester the following. Why did he not defend himself on that Sunday? And I myself asked you a question when I heard these things said about you, if I knew a different Timothy Harris. But that question, why didn't you not defend yourself?
Well, I'm not sure what was said, but it's not everything
Well,
that is said about.
he referred to I'm sorry about that. The second part of it said the attack from Dr. Simmons on you.
Well, I think that attack defined Dr. Simmons more than it defined me. And persons' perception and view of Dr. Simmons has been altered. The very status which was accorded to him under my leadership, that has come under question. The behavior and conduct. And I therefore determined that, truth will rise, always rise. And the vanity of the man, I shouldn't allow myself to become so consumed with. And I did not respond, and the rest of it is history. But I think he did more harm to himself, to his party. We see that reflected anyway in the outcome, and to his ability to perform a certain role in the country with credibility, But that is part of the trust and bustle of the politics, of which, as a national hero, he ought to have restrained himself. But and so I won't look back at that as a failing. I think one could have engaged him in a way, because there are many things that were false, malicious, and deliberate. And I determined with some advice that perhaps we ought not to focus attention on the folly of man, and that we ought basically to focus on the government and what the government has accomplished that had impacted the quality of life of everyone in St. Kitts and Nevis, regardless of their geography and their status in the country. Everyone has benefited, including him, And so, as I said, that is one of the things. Maybe I may write my book, and there will be a chapter or two on that, But it is what it is at this particular moment in time. And as I said, I thought and still do that it defined him, and people saw a side of him that they didn't know, and so in the end, these are going to be matters that will rest with history and rest with people.
Okay, I'll perhaps take two more calls because I'm fast running out of time, caller. I'm going to guide you by the rules of brevity. You're live.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Patrick?
Yes, my brother. How about thou?
I want to say just a few words, because I know I ain't getting long here,
Yes,
long.
go right ahead, my brother. Go right ahead.
I just want to say to Dr. Harris, good night. And I hope
Good
that
night.
the Lord will continue to bless you, for you have done well for the working class people of this country. I want to congratulate you for those prosperous years under your leadership. I have observed that you are very spiritual and humane. And spirituality is the foundation of prosperity. Now, there's so many things. There's quite a number of things I want to thank you for. But just a few tonight. As we go along, you will hear the rest. First of all, I want to thank you for the 16 million you paid the sugar workers. You put money in the hands of the working class people of this country. Thank you for the 330 million for small business development. Thank you for the 4 double salaries you pay consecutively. We thank you for the roof repair program. Thank you for the poverty alleviation program that has over 4,000 people get assistance. Thank you for the management, the comprehensive management of the COVID. Because of that management, plenty of people in St. Kitts don't even understand how dangerous the COVID was. And we hope that God will continue to bless you. And may you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. Don't let nothing take you down. You continue, because The ordinary working class people in this country didn't have it so good before you. Look at the traffic today, look at the neighborhoods with vehicles. These are things that we have to put in perspective. And I know that this year coming, the new year, is a trying year. And we all better come together and understand, look to God, because we know what's going to happen. And I thank you, and I hope God will continue to bless you.
Thank you very, very much. You have been most generous. But thank you for saying thanks on behalf of all those people with a mind and an attitude of gratitude. Bless you. It's been an honor to be of service.
Thank you as well to caller. Perhaps that's a nice way to end the calls tonight, and perhaps give you an opportunity, Prime Minister, to or former Prime Minister, once a Prime Minister, always a Prime Minister, given an opportunity to wrap. And as the caller before mentioned the dividend that was paid, and a brief mention was made of it, one was looking for a wow. You know, when we heard we were getting dividend, you know, but we got some what they call monkey money, you know, quite frankly. So perhaps you can address that in your conclusion, as well to address this as well, Prime Minister, in that upon reflection, over your last 7 years, I mean, as I said earlier, sometimes I listen to some of the scathing criticism and falsehood and the insidious attempts at your personal destruction. I ask myself if I know a different Timothy Harris. And upon reflection, though, as you wrap, I want to ask you, what would Timothy Harris, what would you have done differently if you had the opportunity again?
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the callers, all who tune in, all who will continue to look at this program after on YouTube and Facebook and share their comments, the hundreds who, without social media, are on the radio listening and tuning. I really want to say thank you for your feedback, and those who have had the opportunity to get through the program. Thank you. Be of good courage. And to thank the last caller for a beautiful way of ending in the spirit of gratitude as we are in this very joyous season. It's good to know that people appreciate and such a spectacular record of accomplishment by the government I led for 7 years. Remarkable, unprecedented, and for the country as a whole, and none can gainsay that. And I think that outstanding record terrifies many people, and they are not able to deal with it, and so they embark upon the vendetta, personal destruction, attempting to tarnish, and so on, and to deny you opportunity to express yourself. But God is a good God, and God is a just God. And so I am humbled by that, as I am humbled when I look back at my whole political career. You know, I've done what few persons in this line have been able to do. Starting out in opposition, ending up, as it were, at this particular juncture in opposition, but throughout that journey, it has been an exciting one. Confidence of the people, the confidence of the people from Bellevue, Tabernacle Mansion, Christchurch, Phillips, Molyneux, Bowyers, Lodge Village, Lodge Project, Atlas, all the communities and the country as a whole. And I therefore have always to have a mind of gratitude that whatever may happen, it is that the country has been good to me, and I have tried my best, sometimes against incredible odds, leading at times a difficult government, because we did not have, as it were, a homogeneous government, meaning a government run by one party. And no other leader had had the challenge of running a tripartite arrangement that I did. And notwithstanding that, we were able to hold it together for 7 years. That is historic within the region. We look at the examples in Trinidad, where even before year one, most of these coalition government had fallen apart. And I will always look back with deep admiration for the outstanding statesmanship of the late Van Semry and how he worked hard against incredible odds to stabilize the government and ensure all these benefits to which the last caller made reference and more could have happened, could have come to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And it took a lot of hard work to get it done. And no one worked harder than I did. And I don't have to go about beating my chest to make that point, because the evidence is there for the people to see. I want to thank those members of the team within the government, within the parties, who rendered support and advice. Without them, what we accomplished could not have been part of our collective record of achievement. I particularly want to thank those who had remained and gave support during the difficult period when the unity movement had faced its greatest challenge. I want to thank Minister Hamilton then, when the FIPS, the AG, Minister Byron, and all the team, the civil servants who worked so hard, as it should be, for the good of the country. And really, when you look at the efforts now at revisionism, to change the clock backwards, to lock out these 7 glorious years, you wonder if these people are serious. You wonder if they understand the magnitude of what we, all of us, including the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, were able to do. What we did, no other government was able to do. Not just in terms of the financial performance, the fiscal management, first class, not only in terms of the strides we would have wished to have made, and we have made in relation to the good governance agenda. We wanted, for example, to bring constitutional reform. We had major elements, the term limits. We took it to the parliament, and some people forget the opposition voted down the bill. That was critically important. You know, we took electoral reform, it was placed on the agenda. And our friends in the coalition arrangement had some concern. We had, when we went to Parliament, take it off. Because again, we were attempting to keep a government together. And you therefore had to have a spirit of give and take and sensitivity. Those are things that could have been done. We had a retreat, you may recall, at the Park Hyatt Hotel about electoral reform, about how we are going to bring a system that provides justice. So some of the allegations we have had throughout elections, including the last one, would not have arrived if the agreements that we have reached, facilitated and documented by the person who, as it were, presided over that, had been allowed to go through. But persons keep, as it were, changing their mind. And all when we had an agreement, all when we had a bill, they then created issues that they were uncomfortable. And again, to maintain peace, the Attorney General withdrew the bill from the Parliament. So there's a lot to write about, and there are a lot of things that are to be said in the fullness of time. How we manage, how we deal with differences, the efforts that were made, Herculean efforts, to keep what has been the best political arrangement in St. Kitts and Nevis going for as long as was humanly possible. You posed the question with regard in the CBI dividend, and I wonder what concoction is that? How do you get a dividend? Who really are the critical people who are part of this? One, it's supposed to be a citizenship dividend, but then we hear all persons, whether citizens or none, are part of it. We know that when a dividend is being paid, the dividend is being paid out of profits. But again, this regime that has pledged to a better way cannot yet tell us what is the profit. How were these figures derived? These laughable figures that they put forward to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and that is why there was no wow effect. To give me $250 could hardly allow me to go and make a proper shopping. How is that determined? What are the number? What is the number in terms of the beneficiaries? Is it 68,000, as we have heard? Well, how do you derive 68,000? Are these quote-unquote the voters from abroad who have padded the list? We don't know, because there is no transparency, even as they pretend to be interested in a good governance agenda, when certain basic things like that are not being told to the public. So somebody on their own determine $500 good enough for you, and some of you are going to get $250, and there's no discussion with the persons who are to be impacted by this. And then we are told that you have to go and apply. Well, who are the people applying? And how do you apply? Because dividends are paid to shareholders on record at a particular day. And the company has the record. And so there's no need for people to apply for dividend. So you have this concoction where people think they could call things whatever name they want, notwithstanding their normal and regular meaning. And that is how they are attempting to manipulate things and manipulate people's mind. What is the profit? And we understand that the dividend is paid on the last 6 months' performance, that is performance from January to June. Well, who created that profit? The Harris administration. The Harris administration. And this year, as a result of the reforms undertaken by the Harris administration, our CBI program is going to yield, according to the estimates, $678 million. How much of that is profit? We don't know. But a payment is being made on the basis of profit. And a payment is made on the basis that Dr. Harris left behind the largest buffer of cash in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis. And they left behind that, having given Nevis its best share, $500 million of resources, which never before had been made available to them. What was provided to them was a bone strip. That is what they had. We did that by paying out also the Douglas debt. The land for debt swap was a creature of Douglas. Spend as you like, bankrupt the country, because afterward it would become someone else's burden. Near $500 million to bring back the land to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. That is why Dean Daniel could have a project proposal under the alternative investment in Keon, because we redeem those lands. That is why people in the Brighton and all those areas could go and build houses, because Dr. Harris' administration paid some $500 million thereabout to redeem the land that Douglas told us had been put away. That is why we could have a modern community center at least those lands were before taken away from the people, the valley lands, and all of those being brought back under the control and for the use and the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. So there you have almost $1 billion spent out. We paid off the IMF debt, and we had to deal with a pandemic which will cost us close to $300 million and counting. all of those, and still with the payment of over $1 billion of extraordinary commitments, not of our making. The inheritance of Douglas was the IMF for $117 million. The $500 million that we paid to Nevis was part of the inheritance of neglect. The $500 million which we paid for the land, again, is part of his legacy. Over $1 billion paid that day. And then the pandemic, another 250 and counting maybe by year end. The commitments reached 300 million. A remarkable achievement over a 7-year window compared to the 20-year management of the country. And there's nothing official in the books that he can put to indicate what he had left other than this ballooning, high, unconscionable, outlandish debt where we became a pariah country, going begging to the IMF, to pay civil servants, to get things going at the hospital, run the country in the red. We have changed all of that. And so, again, what we need is the government to live up. The politics has ended. You have brought in thousands of people. You have basically did what you know was irregular. You are now there. Govern the country well. Seek advice. I am prepared to give advice to help this country that I have loved. This country which has honored me and given me the opportunity to serve and to give quality service which the annals of history would document. Yes, there are things one would have liked to see done. And always, perhaps in government, there will be unfinished tasks. You, for example, left the projects to do with the old road. That road was particularly dear to you. You lost a friend around the old road bay. Those were some of your brainchild, or I should say children. You had plans to resolve the water wars once and for all. And we had explored a number of initiatives. What you have left behind and what we have left behind is a certain legacy of accomplishment of which every citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis who wants to be fair and reasonable would agree that the government did perform. Performance matters, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis matter more. We were a people-focused government. So I want to end as the caller before me ended to say thank you to the entire country of St. Kitts and Nevis for all the goodwill, all the love, and all support in and out of government. And my mission and my passion for service will continue for the benefit of all the good people of St. Kitts and Nevis. May God bless the country, and may God bless us all.
And I too will end in a spirit of gratitude, my dear Straight Talk family. I want to thank all our callers. I want to thank our emailers. I want to thank our listeners on Sugar City FM, also on Win FM. And I want in the process to thank Dr. Harris, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Sylvester Harris, our former Prime Minister. And I want to, in the process, say as we end, this is our final episode for 2022. And I want, in the process, to wish you a merry, peaceful, and blessed Christmas and a healthy and prosperous New Year, as we will connect on sometime in the new year, very early, to continue our conversation on Street Talk. I want to thank you. And remember, whatever your mind conceive, that you will achieve. But first of all, you got to believe. So when you wake in the morning, thank God for the morning light. Thank Him for taking you through the night. And my Straight Dog family, keep moving on to a new year. Let's be positive. There are lots of things to do. Some people are living in the past. Let us live in the now, because things will have to be sorted out. No matter what you say, we have to solve all these problems, and there are going to be many. But until we connect sometime next year, perhaps very early in January, not perhaps, very early in January, God's spear. Keep moving on, my Straight Dog family, until we connect. Bye-bye.